Yes, Heath.
I'm just logging in. I assume only the candidates and Moran will have a video feed.
Yeah, and Rick Schwab.
Oh, very good. Yes. And hi to Rick. Haven't seen him in a while.
Good evening, Rick. Can you hear me? Yeah.
We're missing Tracy at this point. Yeah, I'm not muted. Okay, Tracy's here. You want to start, Moran?
Peter, is it possible if I can share a screen for one moment or not?
Why do you need to share a screen?
I have, oh, sorry. That's okay. All right, I'm ready. Welcome, everyone. I'm Miran Kalajian, board member of Woodland Hills Wellness Center Neighborhood Council and vice chair of the Education Committee. On behalf of the Planning Committee, I welcome all of you to this evening and thank you for sharing your Tuesday evening with us. This event would not have been possible without the support of our board member, the outreach and the education committees. I would like to thank our candidates, Nick Melbourne and Tracy Schrader. Thank you for making time for this important conversation ahead of our June the 7th election. Finally, I would like to thank our moderator, Rick Schwab, for continuing his commitment to our schools, community, and neighborhood councils. I am going to give you a quick outline, the general structure of our time together. After this moment, we are going to hear from Logan Fisher, who will lead us in the flag salute. There would be the introduction of our moderator. We will have our candidate statements, which would be 3 minutes a candidate. And then the first part of our town hall will consist of pre-submitted questions for the candidates. Candidates will have 2 minutes per question. Then we will conclude closing statements from each of our candidates. A close by our moderator, then we will adjourn. So thank you so much for joining us, and let's go and begin. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our youngest board member and our student Logan Fisher to lead us in the flag salute. Thank you. The floor is yours.
All righty. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to take a moment and to introduce our moderator, Mr. Rick Schwab. Rick and his family are products of the Los Angeles Unified School District. Rick graduated with honors, included via Beta Kappa from UCLA, and thereafter attended Loyola Law School. Rick has been a labor lawyer for over 4 decades, writing legislation and representing clients in appellate and trial courts. He has been involved in numerous administrative hearings, including published decisions. Rick is married to a teacher. Both of his sons are teachers and comes from a long line of educators. Mr. Rick, the floor is yours to begin.
First of all, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Some I have met in the past before, others the first time. So welcome. This is an important event because Local District 4 is a very important area of the Los Angeles Unified School District. So let's begin with these questions. First, I do want to mention that these questions are developed from people in the community who have asked me to ask some of these questions, as well as other individuals who are interested in education. So any question that I may ask is not intended to show any bias or to show any type of favoritism for any particular position. Let's begin. First of all, I'm going to ask of the 2 candidates, which would like to go first, and then who would like to go second? Do you have a preference, anyone?
I'm happy to go second.
Okay, very good. And also, because we are here somewhat informally, please refer to me as Rick. And if you have no objection, I'll refer to you as Nick, and I'll refer to you as Tracy. Does anybody have any objection to that? Not
No
hearing.
Just to say, my name's Tracy Schroeder, rhymed with motor.
Okay.
And I teach the kids. And then if my opponent going second, then I'd like to request go second at the end.
Okay.
Why don't we alternate on each question, to be fair?
Okay, that's fine with me, if that's okay with everybody else. All right, here we go. Here's the first question. Tracy, these, as you know, are very challenging times. We have been dealing with the pandemic, violence in our communities, as well as returning from remote education to on-campus education. The first question is, how would you as a board member support the physical and mental well-being of students, families, educators, including the most vulnerable, in terms of what type of programs would you develop for them? Tracy?
Thank you. That is a very important question. I'd like to first introduce myself. Again, my name is Tracy Schroeder. I'm a teacher who's been with LA Unified School District for 24 years. I'm an elementary school teacher who's taught kindergarten through 3rd grade, and I am teaching reading is my strength. But these are times where what is needed more than anything else are the basics. So what do kids need to grow and learn and heal? It's different than anything you'll hear, at least what we've been hearing so far from the school board, which is more and more programs. I will tell you what we need. Number one, we need academics. We need the kids back in school learning, and we need the kids focused on what is going to help them learn and grow no matter what their background. And that's something that, based on what we've been seeing in our school board, is what's lacking. The students, we've lost 30,000 students in enrollment as of September. We need to draw them back by having consistency. We heal together, we grow together, and a consistent classroom is exactly what kids need in order to become stable. And then through those positive interactions and building them up in the skills that they need, and a skilled teacher knows how to help them with exactly whatever the next step is, step by step, to grow them in their confidence. And that will help them feel, it will just bring overall stability. My master's degree is in psychology, and I know the value of being together, processing through the day together, connecting together, but building the confidence in their
10
basic
seconds.
act. That's what's going to pull the kids through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. And
Thanks,
also
Rick.
give an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, and thanks, Rick, and thanks, Moran and Reina and Tracy. It's nice to see you. Appreciate your service. And I also want to just say thank you to the neighborhood council members. Before I was on the school board, I was on a neighborhood council as the public schools rep, and so appreciate all you do as unsung heroes in our community. The district has big challenges and even bigger opportunities. That's what motivated me to begin my career as an LA Unified teacher in South Los Angeles. It then motivated me to actually sue the school district on behalf of my students when I thought they were being shortchanged, then to go to law school, work in the Obama administration, and then run for office. And it's what's motivating me to now ask for your support to continue to serve after the greatest educational disruption in a century. And, we think about COVID in a 2-year timeline, but for our students, it's been three academic years that have been disrupted. And so it's so critical that we put kids first and think about how we can support their academic and social emotional recovery. I'm gratified that thanks to our safety efforts, we've been able to keep 100% of schools open every single day this school year, when districts from Culver City to private schools to Chicago to even schools in Las Virgenes were closed. We were able to keep 100% of schools open. And it's so crucial that we continue to do so, because kids need to be in school for in-person learning and with their peers as well. But one of the things that COVID did was lay bare so many of the inequities that our students face. LA Unified has a really highly impacted student population. 84% of our kids are living in poverty, 89% are students of color. And I think what this helped the rest of society acknowledge, it's something that has been crucial to my career, is that schools aren't just the places to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. They are definitely that, and they need to be. And I actually agree with that we need to support our teachers. But it's the wraparound services, the vision screenings, the health screenings, the counseling, the summer school and expanded opportunities, the after-school program.
2 minutes.
We need to focus on.
Thank you very much. Now, Tracy, is she gonna? All right, Nick, I'm gonna have you now answer this question. I'm going to pivot, since you've already talked about it, is school safety. And the question that we have is, how do you feel about Los Angeles Unified School District's recent decision to cut school resources, that is police officers, by $25 million? And if you agree or disagree, what strategy would you use to create an alternative safety program that does not rely on policing? Nick?
Thanks, Rick. So, one of the many tragic things that came out of last week's horrific massacre in Texas is that there's no perfect way or right way to keep students safe. And we have a huge gun problem in this country. If guns were the answer, we'd be the safest country in America. We've seen this happen at schools with armed guards. We've seen this happen at school without armed guards. And what I've been trying to do, actually, ever since my time teaching in Watts in South LA, is figure out, how do we get the school police force to balance what is really in their wheelhouse, which is the safety of students and school campuses and the perimeter, versus what is the job of teachers and nurses and counselors to police, and not really police, but actually support behavior. And so what we've tried to do is actually realign resources in LA Unified. When I got elected, the school district had just given back rocket launchers and like a Humvee that they owned that I think we can all agree has no place in the school district. And there were police officers who were stationed on campuses walking down the hallway, ticketing kids for maybe being a few minutes late to school. And at the same time, we were getting reports that the school police wasn't able to respond to fights at football games or to swastikas being graffitied on campuses in the Valley because they were too busy being focused on campus. So one of the reforms that I led was actually this realignment, get police out of offices and into the community to better patrol our school campuses and our communities, especially in places like the Valley where we have such a wide area from LA Unified. So I stand by that realignment. I believe in the school police department. I believe that actually now they're equipped to respond more urgently because they're not in offices and they're actually out where they need to be. And this is something I've worked with our school police chief, with our police union, and working with our new superintendent on to make sure that police are able to do their job, but that nurses, counselors, social workers, teachers are able to do their job. And we actually just get a little better about role definition and clarity so that we can keep students safe, but also feeling safe when they're in their classrooms.
Thank you. Tracy, same question. What would you do?
With all due respect, I believe that cutting $25 million last year from our school police is the opposite of what we just heard from the opposition. Cutting $25 million has left our schools unprotected. Now, our children deserve to be safe. Our children deserve to be looked after. And this is by excellent school police officers who are trained. And I know who they are because they trained at my school. And I saw how they cared. And I saw what they did to make sure that our schools were safe. And when there had been a shooting at another school at another time, they came and they spoke kindness to my school, to the kids at our school. And what happened was the kids felt safer. They felt calmer. And we have routines in place already. And this was before those cuts took place. We are robbing the children, but alternate voices, of course, if there are other creative solutions to add to, if there are people who are experiencing trauma for some reason because of a past experience that they've had. Now there's a different solution for that, right? There's ways to heal through whatever traumas we've been through, and we can support that. But in the meantime, the kids need to be safe. Also, if I have still have time, I would also like inequity that was just brought up to this question. Maybe if I'm out of time, Mike. Next one.
All right, because this is an important subject, I'm going to give Nick 30 seconds to briefly respond, as there was an issue relating to the board's action. And I'm going to give you, Tracy, then 30 seconds just to respond, but make it very brief because I want to have enough time for both of you to give your closing statements. Thank you.
Well, no, thanks, Rick. And these were the cuts were actually more accurately described as closures to vacant positions and a realignment. A police officer who's in an office and is actually being told to do more than police, but also be a behavior specialist or a discipline counselor is ineffective. And also, as we heard from students, those students felt criminalized in their classrooms. What we did was a realignment that is supported by research and is actually enabling our school police force to respond to everything from fight at a football game to vandalism to, God forbid, a school shooting more quickly because they're where they belong, patrolling our community. I stand by the decision to realign our school police force in the best interest of our students and staff and community safety.
Thank you. Tracy, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. And once again, I reiterate that cutting $25 million is a very huge statement. In addition to that, speaking of inequity, which was brought up, saying that our students are in poverty, the way to bring them through is to teach them to read. We are at an academic crisis. We need police officers to do the caring work that they do. I know them by name because they've been to my school and they care about the kids. But if we have
30 seconds.
Oh, we're out of time. All right, we'll get to it later.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for your cooperation. Well, you both are very sensitive to the needs of the students and to our education program. So, Tracy, I'm going to now ask you this question. recent studies have disclosed that there's been an increase in our schools of substance abuse, including drugs, nicotine, vaping, violence. How do you plan to address these growing rate of substance abuse in our schools? What will be your plan if you were a school board member?
Mhm. Thank you. I'm gonna say I do not have all the answers to the problems of children vaping. Part of that, the thing is this, what was it, vaping and drug use, is this, if this is happening in our schools and on our school campuses, that obviously needs to stop, right? But most of all, this is a family matter. The families need to be brought in, and the kids need to know that they are supported by their schools and their families. We need to reach out. Now, what the opposition has said is they are cutting our support staff. They're actually, I believe that there are many PSWs, PSAs, and those who deal with truancy and counseling who are actually losing their jobs rather than including them as a part of the solution to the problem. And so if we can just use the resources that we already have and help those kids get the support that they need, I think that's step one to getting them back on track. We've done it before in other great ways. I would take another look at perhaps the old DARE program that also helped bring police officers into a gentle, positive role in our schools. And that's just one more way that we can at least look at how we can address this issue in a positive, proactive way that reinforces safety, community, and support for every kid in District 4 and all of LAUSD.
Thank you very much. And Nick, as a board member, the same questions being asked of you. How are you going to address this growing rate of substance abuse in our schools?
Well, thanks for the important question. I'll say, I think I'm the opposition that Tracy's referring to, but I'll say that we are not laying off any nurses, social workers, or counselors, except those very few who have refused to get vaccinated. So I assume we'll return to that. But this idea that we are laying off, if anything, we are hiring. And I should say, if you're out there and you're looking for a job at LA Unified, we are hiring across the board for our bus drivers to our teachers because we need to invest in these. So I hope we can return to that. It's interesting, and apropos of the earlier conversation about school police, despite some of the criticism and what some people may want us to believe, when I looked at the data recently, we actually are not seeing an uptick on school campuses of fights or any physical aggression. What we are seeing, Rick, is an uptick in suicidal ideation, in challenges with substance abuse and mental health challenges. And there are a few things we need to do. One, this is a societal problem. And so we need to do all we can to get these deleterious influences away from our children. We actually, under my leadership, sued the manufacturers of vaping and flavor nicotine because they've been so harmful to our children. We also have to find ways to adapt and make sure that we keep kids safe. And actually, I've been exploring and working with our school police and our counseling services and our health directors to have Narcan, which is a remedy for certain overdoses, especially as we're seeing increasing, really horrible increases of fentanyl-laced drugs that are going around. And parents who are out there, if this isn't something you're aware of, we're trying to educate you because it's incredibly serious. But Narcan is prophylactic that we're hoping to carry at more school campuses. But the third that really gets to this root of it is around counseling and social work and the psychiatric social workers we're bringing into school campuses to help students address issues of suicidal ideation, depression, family challenges, so that they don't turn to substances that are way too available for them in society. And that's why we're suing and doing all we can, including enforcement zones. The superintendent came out with marijuana dispensaries so that they're away from our school campuses. We also have to work with students about how they're feeling and what other safe mechanisms they have.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna, because it was briefly raised, and I'm only gonna devote about 30 seconds again to each of this, the issue of the vaccination. And how do each of you feel as a board member we should utilize the vaccination issue? Is it something that we should bar students who are not vaccinated? Is it something that teachers should be excluded? If you might, Tracy, I'll give you the first 30 seconds, and then I'll give the last to Nick. Is that all right?
Yes, however, I'd like to quickly address what he just said, because the issue about the kids and this drug issue is really a sign of the greater problem of the isolation that took place due to lockdowns. Those kids deserved to be in school. And to your point, vaccinated or unvaccinated or whatever word you call it, healthy, already immunized, kids who already had COVID, whatever the situation, those kids deserve an education. And that's the reason those kids are back in school again and allowed to go, because they were cornered in court.
That's 30 seconds.
They were cornered in courts, and they're not allowed to stop these kids from getting an education. I stand by kids learning.
Thank you. And Nick, your thoughts?
Thanks, Rick. As I said earlier, this is the third school year that's been disrupted by COVID. And the only reason we're not out of the woods and we're seeing new variants and potentially a fourth year of disruption is because not enough of us who are eligible to get vaccinated are vaccinated. We do not have a requirement for students. I understand and heard from a lot of parents who, while they're supportive of vaccinations and are getting their students vaccinated, are, I think, understandably uncomfortable potentially with a requirement before there's full FDA approval, and while students aren't making their own decisions. For adults who are consenting, we do have a requirement that I support so that kids can go to school normally and safely.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to now move on from, obviously, it's very important, school safety, but we also need to address an issue which is very significant, and that is diversity in local District 4. All the school district is relevant, but because we are talking about local District 4, the question that has been asked of me is, what experience do you have working with diverse communities? And after you give us that brief experience, what would you do to serve the marginalized communities, such as students of color, the LGBTQ, and the socially and economically deprived? So first, give us a little bit of your background and then give us your thoughts. And Nick, this is to you.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the question, as I believe that diversity is one of LA Unified's greatest strengths. So I grew up on the west side of LA. I started at Kenter Canyon Elementary School as a student, which is one of the schools in Board District 4. And as soon as I graduated from college, I came back and taught at Markham Middle School in Watts, a school that is 100% students of color. And I taught ESL, English as a second language, and English. And I saw that there were challenges facing LA Unified in all districts and in all neighborhoods, and that the answers for my students in Watts were different than the answers that were, that I needed as a kid in at Kenter Canyon. And as I started running for office, I noticed that those were different than we needed for students at Taft and students at Hesby Oaks and others. And so I've been a big proponent of our decentralization into these 44 communities of schools so that we can not be one behemoth of a school district, but really tailor our instruction to students' needs. And that means both culturally relevant pedagogy, so that students are reading authors that look like them, that sound like them. It also means understanding that some students are going to be leaving school at 2:50 as soon as the bell rings and going to dance and soccer and art, and others are going to be stuck twiddling their thumbs. And so we have to resource effectively. That's why I've been a big proponent of our Student Equity Needs Index. It also means, especially in the horrific, in my mind, Trump years, that we also let students know that we validate them. And despite the attacks on women, on LGBTQ plus students, on immigrants, that they know that LA Unified is a safe, inclusive community where they can be who they are and that we respect that. So I believe it's something that we have to talk about and signify that openness, that we celebrate our diversity, but that also means that we're tailoring our support and our resources and our instruction to support those 18,000 homeless kids in the district, but also the students who live in Encino and Woodland Hills and Tarzana, who have a lot of options. And we have to respect all families and make sure that we're providing strong options for everyone that a public school district is meant to serve.
Thank you. Tracy, what are your thoughts to that same question?
Great. This is very important because all the students deserve to be valued. I've taught at those schools. I taught at Kenter Canyon. I taught at Hesby Oaks. And I know those kids over at Taft. I taught at Kester Avenue Elementary, and I taught kids who are ELL, and I fight for those kids with special needs. Those little ones deserve what they can get. And sometimes our district does not provide what they actually need. And as a teacher, I understand the best way to make sure that they have it is to fight for them. I've had a student who was who had dyslexia, and there was no provision in place, so I fought for that one. But here's another one. Why, if you look at the data from our LAUSD school board, why is it that less than 13% of our ELL, our English language learners, why is it that less than 13% of them are proficient according to our state testing? And why is it that less than 9%, less than 10% of our African-American students are not proficient in reading or math? Why is that a problem? It's because the kids deserve better. We've strayed and we're dealing with, I'm sorry, we care about the homeless kids, right? But it is not the school board's job to house them. That's the problem. We care, and that can be resourced out to our city, to our faith-based community, to all kinds of things. And we care, we care, we care. However, if the kids can't read and write and do math, then how are they going to do the rest? How will they get jobs? How will they provide for their families? They're going to end up homeless too. Let's put a stop to it. The best way to do it is through supporting the basics.
And because, again, this is a very important issue, and both of you have stated very interesting positions. Nick, I'm going to give you 30 seconds in which to briefly respond to that. And then Tracy, I'll give you the last word on it. Thank you.
Well, I think Tracy and I agree on a lot here. I mean, what motivated me to run for office was teaching at a school where only 4% of 8th graders were proficient in math, in a district that needs to do a lot better by its students. And despite the tumult of the last few years with the teacher strike and wildfires and COVID, we have to keep our eye on the prize. But a kid who's hungry, a kid who doesn't have a place to go at night is not going to be able to focus. And as a teacher, I saw that when my kids were acting out behaviorally, and I said, well, what did you have for breakfast? And they said nothing, or Takis, or chocolate. It made a lot of sense. And so I don't think that it's either or. And I think it's a false dichotomy to say we can't support students social, emotionally, or academically. We have to do both. And that's how we're creating not only good academic students, but citizens to going forward.
Thank you. And Tracy, it's your turn.
And I say thank you to the attempt, because I think it's well intended. However, kids will teachers don't let their students go hungry. Teachers will offer a cracker. Teachers will offer, hey, get to the cafeteria. By the way, have you seen what happens to cafeteria food? Probably 90% of it ends up in the garbage can.
10 seconds.
Right? We obviously take care of the needs, but why are we spending with a budget of, what is it, $15 billion budget? Why are we tending to all the other things?
That's time.
Supporting and getting those kids. And I'm not kidding, because in 1999, we did it very, very well. We had supports in place, training.
All right.
Okay, all right, fine.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. We're going to change the subject, and now we're going to move into charter schools. As I'm sure both of you are aware, Proposition 39, among other things, allows charter schools to take over spaces in district schools which are not occupied by a classroom assigned teacher. That is written within the law. With this in mind, and because we are dealing with Local District 4, many people have asked me, as an example, to discuss Woodland Hills Academy, which is a school obviously in the West Valley. It has been told that space will have to be given up to a charter school, notwithstanding the space, while it may not have a teacher assigned, has been used to provide special education services, and it also has been serving special needs students, robotics, and other like services. The question that I have for you is, what will you do to protect the most vulnerable students and programs under Proposition 39? In other words, should we summarily give those spaces away, or should those spaces be reserved for the charter schools? What are your thoughts on this, Tracy?
Okay. First of all, some of my dearest little friends go to Woodland Hills Academy, so hooray for those guys. And yeah, they love the robotics class. But here's the thing. I'm going to tell you I'm a teacher and I understand the learning curve, but most of all, I know we have to follow the law. Okay. If there's a way for a school to keep it, I think it's absolutely fair and right. But what does the law say? That's what I would need to look at. Now, I've been on shared campuses. I taught at magnet schools with a shared campus. I taught at affiliated charters, and I've seen it all, right? And I've got friends who teach at other schools too. I understand what sharing on campus is like, and it's not always easy, and it's not always right. However, we have to follow the law. The charters have to follow the laws, and what's happening right now is not all of them are actually following the law. So that needs to be looked at and addressed and handled appropriately, but also kindly, understanding that there are families. And so we need to listen to the families, and we need to respect the law, and there's a way through. I hope there's more I can say, but I guess I'll keep going. So at Woodland Hills, okay, is that it?
No, you have 40 seconds. You have more time.
Okay. Speaking of following the law, I want to bring it back to the other issue because this is something that I can look more deeply into. However, I want to address the constitutional issue that was brought up earlier regarding families and the vaccine mandates that was brought on by this school board in the most rigid way, more rigid than any school district around. Other teachers are allowed to have freedom of
10
religion,
seconds.
freedom of their medical choices, and the students as well. And that way the school stayed in place. That's what's more important than even this. Hey, I know there's charters and I know there's
2 minutes.
but our school board has sworn to follow the Constitution and they have failed us.
All right, Tracy, thank you. Nick, you've heard the question about the charters. What's your thoughts and what do you believe?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. And just to clarify, because I think it's important for families watching, we do not have a requirement for vaccinations for students for the foreseeable future, not for the next school year. Vaccines are safe and effective. I encourage you to get vaccinated so we can get kids back to normal. I'm glad you brought up Woodland Hills because it's a great example of some of the challenges with co-locations, but the opportunities. And I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to speak to the community to say that thanks to my intervention and leadership, there will be no co-location at Woodland Hills Academy next year. And they know that, and I'm excited to continue to work with the principal, as of a few years ago, new principal and the parents to support that program. You know, I inherited a lot of these co-locations, including a charter school at Sutter Middle School. And Sutter Middle School, thanks to some great investment we've made in our local neighborhood schools, a robotics program, our Verizon demonstration school, worked with Principal Walsh, like really incredible leader at Sutter. They've expanded. So they're expanding. Despite an enrollment decline in the city, that's a school that's expanding, like a lot of my schools. And so they needed more classrooms. And so the district, rather than trying to find a solution, said, oh, we have this legal obligation and we're going to have to move some of the kids from the charter school over to Woodland Hills Academy. And that wasn't in anyone's best interest. It wasn't in Woodland Hills Academy's best interest. It wasn't in the charter school students' best interest. And so I intervened and said, well, why can't we make this work? Can't we work with the charter school as a partner, not as an enemy, not as evil, but as a partner? Many of the families in our community go to that school. Can't we say, we want to find an opportunity for you to keep your space. We don't think you should expand. We don't want you over multiple campuses, and we want to let Woodland Hills thrive. And through that intervention and working with the schools, we were able to find a solution to keep the charter school in their existing footprint, to let Sutter Middle School continue to grow as our neighborhood LAUSD middle school, and then to have Woodland Hills not have any co-location and protect their ability to grow. And so that is one of many examples where I've intervened to work collaboratively when we see all of our schools as partners and all of our kids as having a right to education, as opposed to vilifying or pointing fingers. And so I'm really glad that Woodland Hills Academy will be able to continue and will continue to invest in that robotics program and making sure that school and Sutter continue to thrive.
Thank you very much. All right, Nick, you're going to get the next question. And this is, we're going to move from the charters to what I think is fundamental, and that is funding and resource allocation. First question is going to be asked of you, and I'd like you to give a brief, both of you to give a brief remark about it. just to give us an example, when based upon your past experience, you had to make decisions about budgets, and what was your strategy to decide which program had priorities or what had priority? What was your thought process? The second part of it is, in prioritizing budgets and funding, it is fundamental to decide which resources are needed and which are not. And how are you, as a current board member, and Tracy, if you do become a new board member, how are you going to allocate funds as it relates to community needs, including the arts, vocational programs, special education needs, as well as including about adding teacher librarians, counselors, school psychologists, nurses, therapists, and others. Also, taking into consideration the priority and the needs of perhaps smaller class sizes, as well as salaries of employees to meet the high demands of our system, such that people who work in the LA Unified School District can afford to live in Los Angeles. I know it's a rather voluminous question, but I'm letting you answer what your priorities are, what your background is. So I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, how do you balance a $15 billion budget in 2 minutes or less? No.
Exactly.
No, but kudos to you, Rick, and the neighborhood council. These are all great questions and cover a lot of ground. So, my career, like I said, started as an LA Unified teacher, and I got laid off along with thousands of my colleagues based on a really antiquated seniority-based system that doesn't take into account quality or teacher evaluations or data or student need. And so my students in Watts lost 70% of their teachers, where kids in other parts of the district didn't. And so I'm a big believer in more targeted surgical investments and cuts. And so I will say that, as I've looked over the last few years, and we've done a lot to balance this budget, we reduced by half the long-term liability of this district. That we were on track to, in a few years, have 50 cents on every dollar go to pensions and healthcare, and we're working to turn that around. We also passed the largest school bond in the country so that we can invest, $150 million at Taft High School, another $100 million at Reseda, at SOSIS. But to me, it's all about being data-driven. One of the first resolutions that I brought to this board was our open data portal. We became the first standalone district in the country of our size to have a transparent website, open data, LAUSD.net/open data, where you can look at it, student achievement, enrollment, attendance, and also our budget. And so it's really important that we invest in what works. And so I've been a big proponent of more program evaluation. The district always will maybe throw money historically at things that sounded good, but we actually have to look at what works and make sure that you as taxpayers get a good return on that investment. A dollar invested in a high quality teacher is going to be a lot better than in 3 or 4 ineffective teachers. A dollar in a tutoring program that works is going to be a lot better than just buying books if the students aren't equipped to read them yet. So we have to be data driven. We have to be
10 seconds.
we have to take into account the nuances of every community. I've been a big believer in local control so that the principal of Lanai Road can spend money differently than the principal of Hesby for those communities. And so I think it's data driven, and then letting school communities and principals make decisions that are right for them.
Thank you. Tracy, I know it was kind of a mouthful question I asked, and I hope you get the gist of it. Basically, give me a little bit about your background, if you ever had to work a budget before, and then also give me what you think we need in terms of prioritizing that budget. You may go from there.
Absolutely, I'm ready. So listen up. Look, I'm a teacher. We all have budgets we all have to live within, and that's the bottom line. Live within your means, right? So where do we start? We start with what's most important. We have our students, and our students need teachers. Now, the opposition has said that our teachers are overpaid, and so step one. And in addition to that, LAUSD is out of compliance for having too many out of the classroom administrators and other positions. In fact, I saw a flyer that said that he lowered class size using nurses and counselors. What? And I'm wondering about some of the information I'm hearing. But most of all, the bottom line is you don't overspend. What you've got, you put a hiring freeze. You use the teachers that you already have, those highly qualified teachers, so that the kids can learn. And regarding the budget, you allocate the expenses based on the basics. So we start with the basics. We fund kids reading, writing, doing math, and of course the subjects that are required for them to move through each grade. And then in addition to that, then we look at anything else, but anything else is bonus. And on our schools, hey, there's room for other things, of course. But first up, we start with the basics. And my budget is going to make sure that those kids, those 9% who aren't reading, those 50% of kindergarten through 5th graders who are it's actually 54% who are below proficiency. We're going to make sure that that's in place. So that's what's most important. Obviously, there's buildings, there's grounds work, all those kinds of things. However, if the kids aren't reading, we're doing nothing. So the buck stops there.
Rick, you have to unmute.
He's probably trying and it's saying the host won't let him. That happened. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Here I am. Thank you very much. Because again, the budget and allocation is very important. I'm going to give each of you another 30 seconds to maybe outline what you think are your priorities as a school board member in allocating funds for the budget. In other words, somebody feels that we need more nurses, we need more of certain things. What is your priority? If you could just give it in as brief a moment as possible. I realize 30 seconds isn't enough, but at least it gives us an idea of where your thoughts are. Nick, could you answer that?
Yeah, and I'm curious to hear what Tracy's going to say too, because in theory, like building the basics sounds great, but about 88% of our budget is people. So you have to figure out how you're going to invest in people. And I don't think I've ever said our teachers are overpaid. I actually think we need to pay our teachers more. We have to think differently about pensions and healthcare for new employees if we're going to be sustainable and attract talent. So Rick, to your question, I would invest first in teachers, but I also would let principals and school communities decide. I've always been opposed to this one size fits all. Everyone gets a Taft, so everyone gets a nurse. I want to let the principal of Taft and the principal of Reseda decide, we want more math coaches, we want more English teachers, we want a librarian or 2 librarians. And so I want to give principal, put the money closer to the kids and let the principals and school communities decide. But about 88% of our budget is people. So when we think about it, it's long-term investments and it's how to get the best people and how to make sure we're sustainable and attractive to recruit the next generation of talent.
Thank you, Nick. All right, Tracy, this is your opportunity.
And you have 55 seconds because Nick went over.
Thank you.
About saying that teachers were overpaid took place in 2018 during the strike. What we need is to take care of our own house. You don't go out and go shopping for all kinds of other things if you haven't tidied up your own house. I've heard the school board complaining and practically crying week after week, saying that we do not have enough staff. Step one, what do we need? We need highly skilled staff, which we have. They're firing 220 of them by the end of the month. Those teachers will not have paychecks apparently after June. And what needs to happen is we attract back our highly trained, highly skilled staff. We make sure that they stay on because it is highly skilled teachers who help the new teachers stay. Brand new teachers historically do not last 5 years. In fact, most of them leave before that, and that is not okay. Why are we putting money into waste? We put it into sustainable.
Thank you very much. All right, now, because we have such limits on time, I'm going to move on to a different subject, and this is about campaign financing. Obviously, the questions that have been asked by many people to me, which they asked me to pass on to you, is if you are being supported financially by a particular interest group in this election, how will you be independent? Would the spending that they ask you to make impact your decision? making if you are elected to the board? In other words, will you be able to be completely independent? So with that, I'm going to give it to Tracy.
That's an easy one. I'm 100% independent. I am a teacher. I care about the kids, and that's why I'm running. I got right here 50, I don't know if you can see it, 59,000 spent just today opposing Tracy Schroeder. This happens multiple times a week from the opposition. He's been receiving $80,000 about 3 times a week from special interests. I'll tell you who I care about. I'm a voice for the families. I've noticed how they lock them out. Our school board has closed, pay attention, closed school board meetings in the mornings. How is this allowed? They have closed door meetings with special interests. Look at the agenda, see who they're meeting with, and it includes the union. And it is not always about labor issues. It is about many other issues that do not relate to teaching the kids reading, writing, and math. I tell you, if that's what you want, if you want closed door meetings and no voice, teachers are in mandatory meetings every Tuesday from 1 o'clock until the end of the workday. They are not allowed in those school board meetings because they're in mandatory meetings. This is not the way to run a school board. This is about kids and learning. It is not about special interests and closed door meetings. It is time for accountability, transparency. Let's get back to the basics and common sense. Thank you.
Dick, the
Thanks.
floor is yours.
Yeah, so I guess to address Tracy's question about these closed doors meeting, how are they legal? It's because it's in the law. The law actually states that we have to have some things like contracts and student discipline that are confidential behind closed doors. So I'm all about transparency, but there are certain things like employee discipline and student behavior that has to legally happen per the ed code in closed door meetings. And we actually do those meetings at the beginning of the day so that when we have our public comment in our open meetings, which if you followed an LAUSD board meeting, go way too long. They are usually 12-hour affairs. That public comment at my request is at 4 p.m. every day so that folks can come after school or potentially after the workday. But we're there late, and we encourage everyone to speak their minds. Campaign finance is maybe near the top of the list of things that has to be reformed in this country, and unfortunately is above my pay grade. But I regret the spending for or against candidates that is not controlled by candidates. It's one of the most corrosive parts of our democracy. And so what Tracy was showing earlier, to clarify, does not come from me. I have not spent $1 of money attacking anybody, except the problems, except the challenges that are facing LA Unified. And these are by other interests. The best tool we have, I will say, is transparency and disclosure. And I'm actually the only candidate in this race who has legally filed disclosures about where money is coming from. So whether or not people think it's too much or too little, or from folks they like or they don't like, whether that's SEIU, our bus drivers union who's supporting me, or individual parents and teachers, you can go online, and that's the best tool we have. And actually the other candidates in this race haven't filed the ethical disclosure forms to know if and when and how and from whom they're getting any support. But to your question, Rick, I will continue to be an independent board member. I'm proud that when I was opposed by a big coalition last time around, that those folks have supported me this time, because my door's always open and I'm reasonable. I take every issue one at a time. I meet with everybody who reaches out, and I'm only beholden to the students who are our stakeholders and their parents and their families.
Thank you very much. All right. This next question comes from other people in the community. It's been a question that's been asked, well, ever since probably I've been in the school system. So the question is, what about redistricting? Is LA Unified School District too large, too big? Some say, leave it the way it is. It's doing fine. Others say, well, we should increase the board seats. And others are saying, we should break up the Los Angeles Unified School District into multiple districts. Since there is so much division on this particular question, I'm going to ask you, Nick, to please give me your impression of what do you think is the best solution? Status quo, increase seats, or break up the district, or whatever theory that you may come up with.
Yeah, so I think the district is is potentially too large. I also think we have a challenge in that the local areas of government, the school district is different than the city council, which is different than the county. And so we really saw this when I was trying to respond quickly to some crises during COVID, where the city council has their own jurisdiction and fiefdoms, so does the Board of Supervisors. It has been the breakup has been attempted. Some of you may remember, in the early 2000s, Bob Hertzberg ran for mayor on breaking up the district. In response, then Councilman Villaraigosa said, I'm going to take over the school district, and he tried and was blocked in court. And so I think the esoteric debates are important, but less likely given the political realities of LA. And so what have I tried to do? Well, one, when on our redistricting commission, I appointed a Valley appointee, Wendy Gruhl, former city controller, to represent the interests of the Valley. But I've also been big in this decentralization, the 44 communities of schools. So we went from, one district with 6 local districts, which were pretty large and in and of themselves would be the largest districts maybe in the state, to now we have 44 communities of schools. And it's been my attempt to really break up the district, but in a way that doesn't require an act of the state legislature or years of litigation, but thinks about how we can actually make the day-to-day feel more responsive. So every community now has their mini superintendent. We have the Taft communities of schools, we have the Reseda community of schools, we have offices. Actually, we talked about Woodland Hills earlier, the Taft community of schools office, and Denise Collier, who's the administrator over that area, is at the Woodland Hills middle school, so that families can go there and they don't have to go down to Beaudry, our headquarters, which incidentally I've been trying to sell because I think we should cut the bloated bureaucracy. And every year that I've been on this board, we've cut, and we've put more of those positions either back at schools or in these local communities. I do think we have to be responsive to Encino, to Brentwood, to Venice, to Hollywood. And I think this communities of schools model is the best way to do it, understanding that the district is quite large. And while I get out to every one of my schools more than I think any board member in the history of LA Unified, we still need to make sure the system and structures are there to support local communities, as we have done through these communities of schools.
Thank you. All right, Tracy, I'm going to put this question on your shoulders now. What do you believe should be done?
Ready. Number one, I really believe that it is not the decision of a school board member to decide that. I really believe it's important for the voters. The voters should be the ones who understand the nuances and decide. And yes, I do think it's too big to have these little mini rulers on top of these massive areas the size of Belgium, right? Nevertheless, when have I ever had a school board member actually come to my school when I was there? Not once in 24 years. So we missed you, Mr. Melvoin, but you did come after I was during this campaign. Well, you were spending $490,000 for this campaign. Now, where's the cutting? That's what I want to know. Where's the taking care of the kids? How come $490,000 couldn't be put to better use, taking care of kids reading? I don't understand this. I don't understand the waste of money, and I don't understand the lack of purpose. So I just want to get back to the thought of, yes, there's redistricting that could take place, but I really do believe it belongs in the hands of the people. And I do believe school board members should be present, active, and accessible.
All right, I'm going to, again, because this is something significant to all the people in local District 4, is I'm going to give you 30 seconds, Nick, to be able to respond to what Tracy has said. And then Tracy, reciprocally, you'll have the same privilege.
Yeah, and Rick, this is a matter of public record. I've been to Hesby Oaks where Tracy was teaching the last few years, many times in my tenure, and I met with Principal T and teachers and families. I brought the superintendent there a few weeks ago for the unveiling of a school air quality monitoring network that I've been a big proponent of. So I just, that's a matter of public record, and I've been at Hesby Oaks and in many classrooms since I first got elected. So I just want to clear that up. I think that what we need to do as elected officials is just make sure that we're responsive to the needs of our constituents. That's why I'm out at my schools.
30 seconds.
That's why I meet and do town halls, have an open door policy, meet with families throughout. I'm excited to be out next week at schools speaking at graduations. So we need to make sure that the district, though large, is responsive. And the only district that's larger is New York, but they are able to show improvement. And that's because they were able to decentralize into kind of mini mini districts the way we've done with these communities of schools.
All right. Now I'm gonna,
Tracy, you'll have 58 seconds.
sorry. Thank you. Go on,
Thank
Tracy.
you. Thank you. I guess I just want to say that to spend $490,000 in campaigning says a lot. It says a lot. I'm just a teacher. I taught my first graders this morning and continued through. What's more important is that board members give better representation. When I heard that the opposition was going to come to my school, I waited for him. This was in 2018. I waited for him and he never came. And I don't understand that, because I wanted to meet our school board member, and to suddenly show up with a big reveal just because there's an election doesn't say much to most of us. A lot of us have been waiting, and it just breaks our hearts, but we deserve better. We deserve someone who will show up, who will meet the teachers and actually go in and understand what's going on in the schools, and to be able to be a support.
All right. Now, because we're running short of time, I'm going to try to combine a couple questions together. And Tracy, this will be to you, and I'm going to limit it to like a minute and a half rather than the 2 minutes, because I want to give enough time for you to give closing statements. But the questions I have is that many have come to me and asked questions about why is it that in some schools there's no access to special education programs, and while in other schools there are. What would you do as a school board member to make sure that there's equal access to special education students, whether it is in one of the LA Unified School District schools or it is a charter school? And the second question I'm going to pose to you, and that's why it's going to be timely, it has to be done, is what's your thoughts about school choice? Should parents be able to select the school that they feel is best for their child? With that, Tracy, I'm going to put it on you. And again, try to keep it within the minute and a half, because I want to give you time for closing statements.
Okay, I'll try. So within 1 minute, special ed kids deserve to have the access that they need to learn their next steps. When that is not provided by the schools, it needs to be looked into more carefully. We need to follow the federal laws. We need to make sure that the supports are in place and that the families are respected in the process. I don't believe they should be having to sign all these legal, do not share information plans that they're forced to sign sometimes. I think that there's such thing as community sharing and helping one another. So I believe that there's a lot of reform that needs to take place regarding school choice. Family voices need to be heard. There's a way to do it that keeps our schools stable. As a teacher, I see both sides. I know that parents deserve a right to be able to go to other schools, and there's also such thing as supporting the school community that you're in. So overall, I'm a fan of families getting to choose, but I also believe in stabilizing the schools.
Thank you. Nick, here you go.
Yeah, so one of my biggest frustrations when I was a teacher, and it remained when I got elected, was that our perspective towards special education was always compliance driven and not collaborative. And what I mean by that is that there are all these federal laws, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IEP process, that require the district to check a lot of boxes, but it doesn't require the kids have great outcomes. And so what we've tried to do is move the district away from this compliance orientation of suing the district or saying, yes, this is what your checkbox says, and really working with families to be more collaborative. We've increased dramatically our inclusion programs where kids with disabilities are mainstreamed, not just for after enrichment and athletics, but also for their core subjects. We have a great twice exceptional program at Portola that works where kids who are both highly gifted and on the autism spectrum are able to succeed. We don't have to put someone in their one box. So a big believer that we need to continue that collaboration, that this decentralized school model will help us. I do support parents' rights to choose. I think for too often it's been poor families of color who have been relegated to the failing schools down the street. but I'm also a competitive guy, and I want people to choose LA Unified programs. I was just meeting with some parents in Mar Vista who have left other school districts, Culver City and Santa Monica in particular, to come back to LA Unified because we have dual immersion in Mandarin and Spanish and French, and we're opening in my district Japanese in August. And so I think parents should have that choice, but it's incumbent on us to make sure that the school down the street is also a really excellent choice.
Thank you very much.
Can we
Well-
go to the closing statement if it's possible?
Okay. Yep. First, I want to thank the Woodland Hills Neighborhood Council for providing this opportunity. I came in kind of late, and I hope I did an adequate job to be the moderator for all of you. And I want to thank both of you for your courtesy and for being so polite. With that in mind, it is now time for you to each give a closing statement. The closing statement will be 3 minutes each. And during that particular time, the door is open to you to make your comments. With that in mind, Nick, you will go first, and then Tracy, you will do the last. And with that in mind, I want to thank everybody.
Thanks, Rick. And you were great. I don't know who you pinch hit for, but you did a great job. And I will, Tracy started off by saying her name, we talked about her name, Schroeder and Motor. And so that reminded me of my family name. And when my great grandfather came to this country, our family name was actually Mailworm. It was German and it meant flower maggot. Jews back in the old country had to buy their names. We didn't have a lot of money, so we got flower maggot. And I always wish my great grandfather was still alive, because I wanted to ask him, like, what else was available for the money. But when he was a kindergartner on the Lower East Side of New York at a public school, his teacher asked him what his name was. He said Charles Melvoin. She heard Charles Melvoin, wrote it down, and when he got home, his parents said, well, I guess that's our name now. And I tell that story because the power of public schools in this country to change family trajectories is unparalleled. And yet that elevator of opportunity is broken. It's why I began my career as a teacher. It's why I sued the school district on behalf of my kids. It's why I went to law school, why I worked to organize parents around school improvement, and it's why I ran for the board. And a lot of people say to me, oh, you must have the worst job. Being on a school board during COVID and the craziness of the last few years, I love my job enough that I'm trying to sign up for more. The opportunities in front of this district are enormous. We have so many incredible educators and families and, of course, kids. And it's incumbent upon us, not just on the board, but all of us in the city and county, to support our schools and our families. And I think we have so many great proof points in the Valley and elsewhere that we know we can do it, and we just need to do it at scale. We need stable leadership. I recruited hard our new superintendent, who comes to us from Miami, where for the last decade, he led a district that has been on the top of everything from literacy and numeracy to career technical education programs to dual immersion programs. He's been here for 3 months, and I'm excited to see his success as we put together a new strategic plan to make sure that all kids from Woodland Hills to Watts have a high quality education that prepares them for college and career. I'm committed to that, and I hope over the course of the next week, I can earn your support. And if you haven't voted yet, you should. Voting is open. We only have a few ballots left, or ballots returned in the city. So I encourage you to spread the word and vote and educate yourself, not just on this race, but the other races that touch our students, from city council to mayor. So thank you to the neighborhood council for your service and for this opportunity to have a great discussion.
Thank you very much. Tracy, there you go. It's time to do it.
Thank you. Yes, once again, my name is Tracy Schroeder. I've been a teacher with LA Unified School District for 24 years, and I love my work. I love these kids. They have been my family all these years. I stand for them, I stand up for them, and I listen to those parents because these are their kids. These children do not belong to the government. They do not belong to the state. If you'd like a politician, if you would like someone who actually prints untruths, lies, flat out, even about me, and sends them in the mail spending $490,000, you can have that. We're talking about someone who destabilized our schools behind closed doors. We're talking about all the trauma and the learning loss that's taken place. It would never have happened under my watch. I stand for these kids. I love these kids. And that's why I'm willing to put the work that I love on hold in order to step up and be a support to our communities. These kids deserve better. Let's get back to accountability and transparency. Let's get back to the basics and learning. Let's get back to common sense, taking care of the kids and families, making the voices of parents and students heard, respected, and even when there's a difficulty, we can get through it together, because I believe in listening, and I believe in caring, and I believe in doing the best we can to make our LA Unified Schools better. So I'm asking you for your vote. My name is Tracy Schroeder. It's not too late. You can vote now. I'm top of the ballot. I'm a teacher. It says it right on there. And if you can, vote in person. So guys, thank you for listening today. Thank you to the moderators and everybody involved for setting this up to let our voices be heard. It's difficult when you're a teacher and your budget is so minimal that it's like not reportable yet. So it's that small. But instead, this is called the David and Goliath story. I believe in miracles. And when you stand up for what's right, I know that you hit your mark, and we're going to do better for these kids. Thank you, everybody. Once again, my name is Tracy Schroeder, and I ask you for your vote.
With that in mind, I'll turn it over to Moran and let him conclude this. And again, my appreciation for both of you being so polite, and may you both have an excellent outcome in this election. So therefore, take no position. Take care now.
I would like to take this opportunity to make a very simple acknowledgement. Thank you for both candidates, Nick Melvin and Tracy Schroeder. Thank you to our moderator, Rick Schwab. Thank you for the Department of the Neighborhood Empowerment, Marilu Guevara. I would like also to thank to our planning committee members, Rena Makaki, Education Chair, Colleen Schwab, Sherry Schwartz, Heath Klein, Peter Fletcher, Chair of Community Outreach, and Logan Smith. I would like to thank you all, and it was an extraordinary having you for this important event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Hope to see you again soon.
Take care.
Bye.